What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Danny, Bush, and Angelo coming at you with wide receiver matchmakers. And if you guys have already seen the quarterback video, maybe the running back video is already up. Haven't decided which way we're going with that yet. But what we're doing basically today is we're going through the wide receiver prospects, the tight end prospects, all the pass catchers in this class. And basically what we're doing with them is we're matchmaking them to their best ideal fit in the NFL. We've had a lot of fun talking about these guys over the last couple months, talking about what they do well, what they might not do well. But once these guys actually get drafted is when the real fun starts. So what we're going to do is try and predict who fits where and who fits best where. So Angelo, since you are this is your first appearance on the channel, I'll let you kind of plug yourself, talk about the work that you're doing. Me and Danny have both been big fans of what you've been doing. I know ever since I've been involved in the industry over the past year or so. So you can go ahead. Talk about that.
For sure. First, thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it sincerely. I'm looking forward to it, especially trying to mock some of the players in my Chicago Bears. So that's gonna be pretty fun. But yeah, man, you can find all my work on AngeloAnalysis.com. So basically, this time of year, what I'm doing is I'm putting out all my player profile threads, and those are put on the site. The Y series, that's kind of an in-depth look on the prospects, how they play, where they best fit. And what do they do in terms of role that can kind of project them to an NFL future? So a lot of that's on there right now, along with the Prospect Podcast. Those are on the pages as well. And then the Ascension grading system's up and running. So that's pretty much a tier-based approach to what we're looking at in terms of ceiling for these NFL prospects. Are these guys all pro caliber players, or are they just above average NFL starters? So right now, that's kind of what's going on, and I'm getting pumped and ready for the NFL draft, so I can get the draft guide out and get that ready to roll.
Oh, definitely. Thursday night is going to be a very fun stream. Yeah, we're gonna be streaming. We're gonna be having the drinks ready. I'm gonna be anxiously waiting at number 10 overall to see whether we fuck up or whether we actually take someone we want. So
for sure,
should be fun. But yeah, if you guys haven't already checked out Angelo, make sure you do so. Some of the absolute best film analysis in the industry, if I do say so myself. And yeah, you mentioned the Bears. Let's see that little sneak peek going ahead in the video. Not going to come right now, but we've had some in-depth discussions about that pick, and if the guy that I have is going to land there, I'll be pretty pumped up. But with that being said, Corey, which team are we starting out with?
Well, first, Danny, we have to hit the intro.
Good call. Let's hit the intro on them.
Okay, so we are going to start basically in draft order, or where we think these teams might address the wide receiver position and the pass catcher position in the draft. So we're going to start off with the Cincinnati Bengals. And the Cincinnati Bengals, if any of you guys are following the draft, you know that the big rumor, especially at the pass catcher position, is that they're going to select Jamar Chase with the number 5 overall pick. And the big debate, of course, is Sewell versus Chase. You go protection versus weapon. And Cincinnati in general is a team that is in need of a receiver at some point, because they only have Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins. Obviously, A.J. Green went off to the Cardinals, and John Ross is now on the New York Giants. And they have Auden Tate currently slated as their number 3 receiver on their depth chart. Drew Sample is currently their starting tight end, I believe. He was a second-round pick a couple years ago. So, Angelo, we'll start with you. What direction do you see the Bengals going at the wide receiver position?
Man, I think it's tough, because I think Sewell's kind of the best pick. I think at 5, you have to protect Joe Burrow, especially him coming off an ACL. I mean, fairly serious injury, especially early on in his career. I think it'd be best to get him the best offensive line prospect in this year's class, and the best we've probably seen in the last few years. So I think that makes the most sense. So I actually have them going and not taking a receiver the first 2 rounds and waiting till round 3 and taking Nico Collins. I think that makes a lot of sense for them. I think they have their X receiver in T. Higgins. They have their slot guy in Tyler Boyd. But I think it makes sense for them to bring in more of I'd say like a developmental prospect like Collins, who has a lot of physical tools to his game that could lead him to being a pretty productive pro. But yeah, I think the Bengals have some needs to shore up that don't involve wide receiver. I think they have I think they have 3 solid pass catching options in Higgins, Boyd, and then you have Joe Mixon out of the backfield. But shoring up the offensive line and getting some more weapons defensively is probably their first 2 priorities.
Yeah, just touching upon that. I mean, I've watched Nico Collins for the past couple of years now as a Michigan fan, and it's been so evident all these Michigan pass catchers over these past few years, man, you do not want to see the quarterback play that they've been dealing with. And same applies to Nico Collins. When you watch this guy on the field in terms of efficiency, in terms of being able to work downfield, he's got the size, he's got the speed, he's got the requisite athleticism. Landing in a spot here, as you mentioned, with the Cincinnati Bengals, having those other playmakers in place, not really being pressured right away to play, I do think that's a very solid fit. I'm going to be talking about him a little later. My fit, just kind of segueing for the Cincinnati Bengals, from my perspective, I would take Penei Sewell. I would shore up that offensive line. He is a generational tackle prospect, a top 3 overall player, in my opinion, in this entire class. However, Joe Burrow's going to be in there. Joe Burrow's going to be saying, guess what? This is a guy I broke records with in college. Just get me my number 1 alpha from college. And I think it's going to be Ja'Marr Chase. I just think he's going to look at that. He's going to see Ja'Marr Chase, going to see the versatility that he brings as an alpha receiver. As much as I love Higgins, as much as I love Boyd, having Chase in that receiving core could make this offense one of the top 5 or so units from a sheer weapon standpoint. Now, that's a lot to predict considering their offensive line is still kind of in shambles, but you're going off the assumption that Jonah Williams can stay at home at left tackle and really improve on his play from last season. You sign Riley Reid for right tackle. Maybe you're feeling a little comfortable about that. And going off a quote, I believe it was in Hayden Winks' recent mock draft, basically the offensive coordinator or the offensive line coach, one of them, for the Cincinnati Bengals, was asked about how he should attack the offensive line position in this draft. And he basically said, he's like, yeah, you know what? This draft is full of a lot of good 2nd and 3rd round tackle prospects. And I heard that. I'm like, wait, like, are you just saying it's not good enough of a need to take at 5 when Penei Sewell's staring at the board? I think they're just in love with Ja'Marr Chase based off the rumblings with Joe Burrow, the connection with Burrow. And they're going to take the toy. I just have that gut feeling they're just going to snag that toy and they're going to be like, okay, let's ride.
Yeah. I heard Kyle Brandt was on the Rich Eisen show and he compared it to buying a new TV for his house or fixing his driveway. And basically,
that's a really good
an
analogy.
8-inch flat screen is what he said the Cincinnati Bengals should do. And I think when you look at Ja'Marr Chase's perspective, since this is a fantasy channel, I think it's the best fit for him personally. When you look at the range of the draft that Ja'Marr Chase is going, I don't think there's a chance in hell this guy makes out of the top 8 picks.
No,
I think he's a locked and loaded wide receiver 1, probably across the board for like 90% of the teams in the NFL. And I think when you look at the Detroit Lions and the Miami Dolphins and the Cincinnati Bengals and the Atlanta Falcons, I think those are probably he's going to go to one of those 4 places. And I think the quarterback connection, obviously, and the fact that I believe in Joe Burrow the most long-term out of all those quarterbacks makes me like this fit for Ja'Marr Chase the most because he obviously has the most chance for fantasy success in that place. So to the next team that we have here, we have the Miami Dolphins who pick right after Cincinnati in the 1st round of the NFL draft, the 6th overall pick. They have Devontae Parker, who had a bit of a down season last year after having a breakout season in 2019. They brought in Will Fuller, who will be suspended, I believe, for the first game of the season, but should be ready to rock and roll after that. And then after those guys, there's a lot of question marks. You got Preston Williams, who was a promising undrafted rookie a couple years ago, tore his ACL, kind of up and down play last year. And then you got a bunch of kind of gadget guys like Jakeem Grant behind that. So where do you guys see him or see the Miami Dolphins going with their pass catching position? We'll start with you again, Angelo.
I think it's going to be interesting to see because I think it's going to depend on, Dan, you touched on it. You know, if the Bengals take Chase and Pitts isn't there, what do? You know, I think they get a chance to draft Ja'Marr Chase, and they do. I think he's what they're looking for at X. You know, I think you have Will Fuller as a great Z receiver. Lynn Bowden Jr. is an interesting one too in the slot. I think I actually like the way he played later on in the season last year. So I think those 3 are probably what they're going to run with. I think if they have an opportunity to draft either Kyle Pitts or Ja'Marr Chase, pick your poison.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be Chase. I have a gut feeling Cincinnati's going to want to protect Sewell. I hope I'm right. But protect Burrow with Sewell. But I don't know. It's one of those interesting conundrums because I don't think they'd pass on Chase no matter what. So if Chase is there, they're going to take Chase. If Pitts goes at 4 to Atlanta, then I think the pick's pretty easy. So my pick, I have the Dolphins. I penciled it in as Ja'Marr Chase under the assumption that the Bengals are going to want to kind of shore up that offensive line and protect Burrow long term.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. It makes sense. I touched upon Jamar Chase with the fit to the Bengals. I do think that would also be a good fit with the Dolphins. You mentioned they have Devontae Parker in place. You got some of the gadgets with Jakeem Grant and Lynn Bowden. Will Fuller's going to come back after suspension, and you kind of got Preston Williams in place. There's no real alpha of that core. Getting a guy like Jamar Chase would be an alpha. However, in my scenario, as I mentioned, Jamar Chase off the board at 5, and the other guy that you mentioned may or may not be on the board. A little sneak peek to later on when we talk about the 4th team in this mock draft. But with that being said, 6th overall, because those two are gone, I'm going with Jalen Waddle. I'm just going to look at it from the fact that Tua Tagovailoa needs somebody that he can trust. Let's get an elite field stretcher, an elite separator that Jalen Waddle provides. Now, when people stigmatize Jalen Waddle's game, it just makes me infuriated because people just want to point out to, he's
Don't
a
you
burner.
dare bring up Henry Ruggs' name.
I'm not going to. People are going to say, he's John Rossi. He just works down the field. No. Jalen Waddle does it on all 3 levels of the field. He creates separation with ease. He's got more nuance to his game than people even want to remotely bring up. And the most underrated part of his game is his verticality. Like there's numerous times where he's working down the field. There's 2 defenders on him. And guess what? He's still going up and he's still getting that ball. I feel like Jalen Waddle would be the perfect complement to kind of what they have already there with Devontae Parker, Preston Williams, Will Fuller, and those 2 little gadget guys. Jalen Waddle, give Tua Tagovailoa a guy who can separate an elite clip. And nobody, apart from maybe his teammate, does that better in this entire class than Jalen Waddle. So I think this would be a no-brainer. If those 2 are gone and you're not taking Sewell, I do think that Jalen Waddle would be the best overall fit at 6th overall for them.
Yeah. I think both of you guys went for the high-end guys. I didn't. I think the Miami Dolphins choice, you mentioned Chase being there at 6 for them. I don't think he's going to be there. I also don't think Kyle Pitts is going to be there. So that's going to be a sneak peek to one of my other teams as well. But I think they're going to opt to go for a guy in the 2nd or 3rd round. And I matched them up with Amari Rodgers. I think Amari Rodgers, he's a guy that I wouldn't say I'm a huge fan of Amari Rodgers. I think he has some limitations in terms of, I think he has somewhat questionable hands. There's a number of other things that I just didn't really like about his game, aside from being like that yak monster Deebo Samuel type, which I do think he can do. I just don't think he's a very complete player. But that's all they really need, to be honest, in Miami. I think I'm a little bit higher on Devontae Parker than many other people think. I think he can be a 1B type of receiver. And I think Will Fuller showed last year that he can be a number 1 receiver. What he did for the Houston Texans. I know he's only on a 1-year deal, but if he plays really well and Miami re-signs him, I think that rounds out into a nice core. And we know Miami was going for a slot upgrade when they were, sniffing around Juju Smith-Schuster and free agency and stuff. I seriously think with those 3 guys, you can build a formidable receiving core. And at 6, I mean, if Penei Sewell's there and you want to upgrade your offensive line, however, you move Austin Jackson, who you took last year in the 1st round, to right tackle or something like that, you just make it work. I think Tua needs protection and he needs weapons. So whatever route you decide to go, it's just kind of make Tua a better quarterback season in Miami, however you can do that, whether it's weapons or protection.
Yeah, no, you covered it. I do agree.
100%.
Yeah. I think we should just go to Atlanta right now just because
we've already hinted
kind of teased it. So the Atlanta Falcons, I think I know who me and Danny have going to Atlanta. Angelo, who do you got going to Atlanta?
I have Kyle Pitts.
Okay.
I think that's it's going to be interesting to see because I think they go 1 or 2 ways. I think they go Justin Fields or they go Kyle Pitts. I think those are the 2 picks at 4 for them. So we'll see what happens. But I think, they hinted at Matt Ryan having a couple more years left in the tank. And I think that's a firm belief. And I think he does. And imagine that team with Jones and Ridley and Pitts. Like, that might be the best trio of pass catchers.
They could add a running back to that.
In the NFL, and then they
Williams or something.
Add Javonte Williams in round 2, and you're talking about a pretty dang good offensive unit, and one that can contend for an NFC title. I think. So I think that's how they approach it. So I have Pitts at 4 to Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head with that one, a little catchphrase of mine. But I fully agree. I mean, personally, if it's me, I would take Justin Fields. But you mentioned the contract situation of Matt Ryan, given the recent move of they kind of restructured it. So basically what would happen, according financially, is if they were to move on from this year, it'd be a $27 million cap hit, $49 million for next year, and $44 million in 2023, respectively. Now you're talking about the fit of Kyle Pitts to Atlanta. My philosophy is if you're not trading down or taking a quarterback, take the guy that you're positive is going to hit in the NFL. Guess what? If I'm going to bet on one single player that's not a quarterback, obviously if it's a quarterback, you can say Trevor Lawrence, to be a Hall of Famer in this class, I'm taking Kyle Pitts.
100%.
I mean, just imagine that offensive personnel. I mean, you're adding two of the best receivers in the NFL, a guy who's a 99th percentile athlete at his position, one of the highest producing tight ends we've ever seen, and on film matches every box that you can possibly throw his way. Kyle Pitts in that offense would make them a top 5 unit. And I fully understand. I'm in that boat last year. Oh, well, how does that fix the defense? People were saying about that when the Cowboys took CeeDee Lamb last year. What people don't understand, I've said it multiple times, if you're in Dynasty Fantasy Football and you're in your Dynasty rookie draft, do you take the running back just because you need a running back bad, or do you take the best player available? You take the best player available because you can fix your needs through other ways. You don't just pass on the guy because you quote unquote have that receiver position or tight end position settled. Yes, Hayden Hurst is a fine guy. He's no Kyle Pitts. Same thing with Dallas if he were to fall at 10. I like Blake Jarwin. I think he's a very talented player. He's no Kyle Pitts. So adding Kyle Pitts to that offense, I know Corey's going to touch upon it a bit as well, and you did as well, will make them a 30-point per game offense. We'll make it so that Matt Ryan over these next few years can keep adding that value, can keep showing why he's a good quarterback, because quite frankly, people are down on him after one bad year of being injured. Like, I just don't understand it remotely. So at the end of the day here, take the guy who's going to be a Hall of Famer if put in the right spot, and Atlanta is absolutely the right spot for Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, and I think you saw the way from Kyle Pitts' fantasy perspective, it's really exciting if he lands with Arthur Smith, right? Because Arthur Smith, former tight ends coach, we saw how we used Jonnu Smith and all those dynamic ways. Jonnu Smith, I swear to God, every red zone play, if it wasn't to Derrick Henry, it was to Jonnu Smith. So that gets you excited about Kyle Pitts from a fantasy perspective. And I think you saw him used in the backfield and all these like versatile ways that we all know that Kyle Pitts is 10 times the prospect that Jonnu Smith ever was. So I think the fit's good. I think you guys summed it up. Let's just move on to the next team. So I also have Kyle Pitts going to the Atlanta Falcons, if you couldn't tell. The Detroit Lions, the next team kind of in the draft order as well. Angelo, we'll start with you. I think me and Danny might have the same player. I'm not sure.
I think so.
It's interesting because with the Lions, this is the first place where I could see Devonta Smith going. I don't have it happening, but I think that would be a really good fit for them because I think he could play that Robert Woods role for Jared Goff extremely well. I mean, Devonta Smith's one of the most versatile players in this whole entire class in terms of where you can line them up. But I actually have them going, I think it's in the 3rd round, pick 72, Mari Rodgers. We mentioned him earlier. I'm going to Miami, but I think he's also one of those guys that could be the Cooper Kupp of that offense. And I think Jared Goff needs that. There's not much in Detroit in lieu of pass catchers right now. It's basically Hawkinson, Swift, Williams. You have Pearman. You have a bunch Cephas. A bunch of just all right guys besides Hawkinson and Swift being pretty good. But I think they need either a safety blanket or they need a pretty premier target, which is Devonta Smith. So I think one of those two guys. I think it's one of those two guys. But we'll see how it shakes out. But I'd be, as a Devonta Smith fan, I would actually be really excited if you went there because I think you're looking at 125 plus targets year one off the bat, and that'd be fantastic. And they're going to be playing from behind a lot too. They don't have a great defense. I think Campbell's gonna have to build that whole nucleus up over the next few years. So we're looking at from a dynasty perspective. I mean, man, like, it wouldn't shock me if Devonta Smith goes there and he's a top 24 wide receiver year one.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. And that kind of leans into my fit. I do have Devonta Smith as the best overall fit here. We recently did a mock draft where we had Devonta Smith going, and people that were Lions fans were like, well, they have so many needs. Like, why would you take a receiver at 7 when they can just take somebody else? Their current receiving depth chart, I don't think people realize, is made up of Quintez Cephas, Brashad Perriman, and Tyrell Williams right now. Yeah. If you want Jared Goff to have any type of chance, you have to get him weapons, period. And I just don't understand why people were so against that idea of taking the receiver at 7. I get it. If they do wait, I do think Amari Rodgers is a good fit. For me, though, I'm looking at it. get him that alpha, give him a chance year one. And you mentioned it, hit the nail on the head. Devonta Smith could be that Robert Woods type player for a Jared Goff offense. You can do a lot in the receiving game. He can do a lot in the screen game after the catch, work downfield. He's just an all-around complete receiver. And I love that for them. Now, you could point at a guy like Jalen Waddle, Jamar Chase, whatever. I understand they're also elite receiving prospects. The reason why I think Smith out of them is actually the best profile for them is because he kind of dips his toes into every single aspect of being a receiver. He can do everything well. While Jamar Chase is elite at a couple things, Jalen Waddle's elite at a couple things, Devonta Smith's kind of just really good or elite at everything. And I think that's what Detroit needs, that type of presence in their receiving core, and need that alpha that can really just step in day one, as you mentioned, take on the 130 type target number. Because quite frankly here, if he's not entering that system, who else is getting those targets? Like, are we giving Quintez Cephas 100 targets? Are we giving Brashad Perriman 100 targets? Tyrell Williams, right?
I mean, yeah, it's 100%. I mean, you're betting on a guy following you at 41 that you really like. Tylan Wallace is a good fix. He's a guy that's going to probably fall a little bit in the draft. I could see them liking him a ton in the second round. He's probably going to be more of a midday 2 guy, so probably mid third round, but I could see them doing something like that too. Amari Rodgers, like I said, I think that's kind of the Cooper Kupp, comparison there of what he can do after the catch too, how he works so well around the line of scrimmage. And I think he's a fun player as well. So we'll see what happens. But I mean, I'm excited to see. That's the first spot. Danny, you and I are kind of on the same page. That's the first spot for me where I could see Devonta Smith going.
Agreed. Yeah. I think when you talk about, and I'll reference what Danny said, people not liking what we had in our mock draft, I think there are 4 blue chip prospects in this class that are not quarterbacks. I think the 3 we already talked about, Penei Sewell, and the 2 big pass catchers, Jamar Chase and Kyle Pitts. I think Devonta Smith is the other one. I think Devonta Smith is almost like he's got 10 lower in my grading system than Jamar Chase. He is my wide receiver 1B. He's not my wide receiver 2. So Devonta Smith at 7 to me was best player available. And you have so many needs on that team. And the strength of this draft, you go as the way that the draft goes. The strength of this draft is offensive skill positions, especially in the range of the draft that you're picking if you're Detroit. So to me, that was the best player available. I think Devonta Smith, as you mentioned, he fills that Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods. He can do everything. He's a versatile piece. And from a fantasy perspective, like 120, 130 targets easy as a rookie in that situation.
I was just going to say, you mentioned he's a point lower than Chase for you. He's actually my wide receiver 1. And the top 3 are so close for me. They're all separated within 2 points. But he actually is my wide receiver 1 because I love the fact that he can step in wherever and just contribute in day one because he's ready-made to produce in the NFL. That being said, you're the host, but you can kind of segue to the next team here. And what is it?
Yeah, the New York Giants, another team that is definitely in need of some receiver talent. We already saw them address it with Kenny Golladay in free agency, but I think their core still needs to be rounded out a bit. They obviously have Darius Slayton, who showed a lot as a rookie, kind of had a bit of a disappointing season this year. And then they had Sterling Shepard, who's often injured, but is productive when he's on the field and is able to, amass 7-8 targets a game and be somewhat productive from a fantasy perspective. But you didn't have a true difference maker, and you're hoping Kenny Golladay can be that guy. But Angelo, do you have them adding any other true difference makers to this receiving core, or are they kind of punting this one?
I think they're going to add a good complementary piece, and that's a Dwayne Eskridge out of Western Michigan. I think in the 3rd round, they kind of play around with that. I think they're like pick 76. So I think he'll be available there. I know the Bears are, rumored to like him a lot in the 2nd round potentially. I think it's a little early for Eskridge, but he's a guy too that he's kind of that speed threat of the offense. And you have 3 guys, legitimate. I mean, 2 guys who are legitimate threats to take it to the house anytime. Obviously, you have Saquon Barkley, Evan Ingram. You have Kenny Golladay there. You have Darius Slayton. I mean, you're going to need another target to make Daniel Jones a little more comfortable. And I think Eskridge can develop into a pretty dang good slot receiver and kind of, take the targets away from Sterling Shepard because I think they need some more dynamism there. But I think they don't go the route of Devonta Smith if he's there. I kind of have, and I've alluded to it before, but I have Devonta Smith falling a little bit. But I think this would be a good spot for him. But for me, I mean, in terms of dynasty, that's obviously not the best fit. because of who's throwing the football. There's a lot of mouths to feed there, and a lot of pretty decent mouths too. So I have Dwayne Eskridge going to them in the third round.
Yeah, you basically covered what I was going to say. I also have Dwayne Eskridge here. You're talking about in terms of a potential fit. You got Shepard, Golladay, and Slayton as your supposed 3 with John Ross as your depth guy. Taking a guy like Dwayne Eskridge really provides a yards after the catch type punch for this team. You mentioned the physicality on the outside of a Kenny Golladay. You mentioned the slot presence of a Sterling Shepard, and you mentioned that outside speed of Darius Slayton. Getting a guy who, in Dwayne Eskridge, who, in my opinion, can kind of just be that guy you move around in the offense. I don't really think necessarily from a lateral ability perspective that John Ross can fit that role. If you get Dwayne Eskridge, I do think he can do a lot for you. He can return kicks for you. He can be that guy that you use in the screen game. He can be that guy that you use underneath. I feel like he's a very versatile piece. So taking a chance on him in the third round, I think would be a very good fit for the Giants if they do decide on passing on an elite talent at the 11th overall pick. So I agree. I think Dwayne Eskridge would be a home run type fit for this offense as a complementary piece.
I went speed too, but I went speed high in the draft. I went with Jalen Waddle. I think
I like it.
You're in a make or break year with Daniel Jones, right? Like we were at this point last year with Baker Mayfield, right? We didn't know if this, like Baker Mayfield could have been a bum, a bust. Cleveland, typical Browns are looking for another quarterback. I seriously think Baker Mayfield took a huge step last year. And I think Daniel Jones is going to do the same thing this year if you make a pick like this. I think if you're the Giants, you have to go offense, whether it's Rashawn Slater, whether it's Jalen Waddle. I think those two guys are the big decision. It's going to depend who's on the board. I think Carolina is obviously a big threat to take a tackle. I think you got teams that might hop you for a tackle if you're the Chargers or something like that. With the New York Giants, I think Jalen Waddle at that point in the draft will be the best player on the board. And I'm not letting Sterling Shepard stop me from taking Jalen Waddle. I think he's a much better slot option. I think he's a much better deep option than what you get with Darius Slayton or John Ross. Wherever you want to play Jalen Waddle, he makes your team better, and he gives you something that your only true established piece in Kenny Golladay, who you've never seen work with your quarterback yet, doesn't give you. So I really like to fit a Jalen Waddle to the New York Giants. I think Daniel, if he has Jalen Waddle, Kenny Golladay, Saquon Barkley, Evan Ingram, Sterling Shepard, and Darius Slayton, this dude has no excuses. Like, you got to see what you got in your former 6th overall pick, and Jalen Waddle helps you do that.
Yep, fully agree.
Yeah. All right. So another team that is often rumored with a lot of receiving talent. We'll go over and staying into the NFC East. We're going to go to the Philadelphia Eagles. We've already talked about the guy that I have. Who do you got, Angelo?
So I think this is an interesting one because I have them taking someone in the third round. I have them taking Tylan Wallace, pick 70. I like Tylan Wallace quite a bit. Without the ACL injury, I think last year he's a second round prospect. Great jump ball, contested catch wide receiver, plays above the rim, physical after the catch, good blocker. They need an outside receiver at X to take some of that burden away from what the ghost of Alshon Jeffrey kind of gave us last year, right? Then Fulgham with the 5-6 games he played in Flash, and now apparently he's not in the good grace of the coaching staff, but hopefully with Sirianni there now it's going to change a bit. But I'm not sold on him walking as a day one starter at X. Obviously you have a Jalen Reagor at Z. I think he's pretty good.
Yep. Greg
Ward, okay.
Fulgham.
I know Fulgham Ward. It's like you don't have a lot there. I think they're another candidate to take Devontae Smith.
Yeah.
I think Waddle's the second receiver off the board. I think he goes earlier than Smith does. And there's also a spot for Smith to work with a quarterback he's worked with before at Alabama and Jalen Hurts. But I have the Eagles taking Tylan Wallace at pick 70.
If they pass on Devontae Smith,
I have them passing.
Never going to hear the end of it. If they do, I don't think he's going to make it there. But if they do pass on it, and you're right, and he does slip because of the weight concerns and stuff like that, it's going to be, remember when we didn't trade up for CeeDee Lamb? Remember when we didn't? I don't remember if Jefferson went ahead of them where they
remember when we took J.J. Arcega-Whiteside over DK Metcalf?
We took J.J. Arcega-Whiteside over DK Metcalf and Terry McLaurin. Like, I have a feeling it's going to be that type of situation if they pass on Devontae Smith. So for Eagles fans' sake, I hope they don't do that. Danny, I think we might have the same player as Angelo, because I have Tylan Wallace as well.
I have Tylan Wallace as well.
Oh, nice. There you go.
You fully mentioned it. For me, I look at Tylan Wallace as that type of guy who is going to slot in the NFL, and you kind of know what you're going to get with him. You're going to get with a guy who's going to catch the football. You're going to get a guy who can provide that outside threat presence, who can be able to really come down with any contested catch that he puts his head on. Because let's be honest here, on film, 50-50 balls are more so an 80-20, as I always like referencing. And it's so weird to see a guy at the catch point of his size just being able to dominate. And that's what Tylan Wallace brings to the table. And I think we mentioned in the DMs a couple times as well, but he can, if you need him to move in the slot, he can be that for you. He can be that Tyler Boyd for you if you need him to play inside. And as you mentioned, he can line up on the X, be physical on the outside, and come down with those situations. Aside from Alshon Jeffrey, which we don't even know is a huge question mark at this point, the Eagles do not have that steady presence that says, Jalen Hurts, it's third down, you can trust me to catch the football. They don't have that guy. Mm-hmm. Tylan Wallace can be that guy for them. And yeah, pick 70 would be perfect type of draft capital for him to kind of slide in there for the Eagles.
Yeah, it's been documented that I don't really like Tylan Wallace, but the things I don't like about him, I think, are not a big deal for what the Eagles do on offense, because I don't think he provides all that much after the catch. That's personally what I've seen when I've kind of observed his film. But you got a guy like Jalen Reagor, who we know has a lot of speed, and you have dynamic options at tight end, and you have a dynamic running back as well. So he can be a reliability factor that the Eagles have been missing in their passing game since Alshon Jeffrey in 2017 had that great season. So yeah, I think Tylan Wallace, you guys already talked about it. I think it's a great fit for that team. He's a guy that I see probably in the second or third round going to the Eagles, and they'll probably take like a defensive player or something like that in the first round in that kind of situation. But to the next team that we have here, and this is the New England Patriots, I actually think this might be one of my favorite fits of all the ones that I have. But Angelo, who do you got?
So I don't have them going receiver early on, but I think a little later on in the draft, they're going to play around with it. I think in the second round is when they take a stab at Seth Williams. I think as an upside prospect, they have a lot of just okay guys at the position, like Harry Aguilar, like they just have obviously the two tight ends. So there's a lot of just interesting mouths to feed there now. They don't really have that go-to presence that Cam is going to probably need, and I think Williams could develop into. I'm not that high on Seth Williams as a prospect, but I could see him adding a dimension to what they don't have already. They don't have a true downfield presence in terms of the 50-50 balls, contested catches. N'Keal Harry hasn't developed into that, and I don't think he ever will. But that's something that I see Belichick going after, and there's not many receivers that profile as that in this year's draft class. And that's the tough thing is, you have guys like
Sage Surratt
and Sage Surratt who are, both those guys are probably 5th round, 6th round, 7th round draft capital.
Yeah.
And Seth Williams is kind of a similar mold in terms of, body type, stature, size, but he also has legitimate downfield speed, sub 10, 700 meter guy in high school. So he's a guy that can develop into an alpha of an NFL offense in the right system. And I think the Patriots might take a stab at that in the second round. Obviously, if Devontae Smith's on the board at 15, we keep referencing it. They probably won't pass him up, but I actually have the Belichick's Patriots they are passing up Smith at 15. I think it's going to be the CeeDee Lamb of this year's class, where you're like, why is this guy falling so far? Because, CeeDee Lamb was supposed to be a top 10 pick last year, and it didn't happen. So I think we see that again with Smith. But I do have, the Patriots going after Williams in round 2.
Yeah, I have the exact same fit. I've been well documented on this channel that I'm not high on Seth Williams. I think, okay, you know what? You want to take a stab on him. I personally have him close to a 3rd, 4th round type talent. I can see, as you mentioned, because of his profile, that a team would be taking a chance on him in the second. And the New England Patriots seem to be that team. They need that type of physical in terms of size. I don't think he plays up to his size, just for the record. I'll be saying that multiple times, but that in terms of size, you got that 6'3", 210-pound type alpha receiver. They don't necessarily have that in their receiving core,
right?
Nor, because of the lack of development that we've seen from Harry, do they have that 50-50 type of go-to player, especially even a guy in the red zone. I mean, Seth Williams can provide that type of output for your team. You got a separator with Nelson Aguilar. You got those 2 tight ends with Henry and Jonnu Smith. Now let's get a typical outside receiver that can end up developing into Cam Newton's number 1 target. So from a fit perspective, I do really like it. Even though I'm lower on the prospect, I do think if he landed here, I would be willing to give him more of the benefit of the doubt because I could see the potential usage.
Yeah, and to me with the Patriots, I feel like I've done a good job in the past of getting in the Patriots' head because we all know it's a tough thing to do, right? Like we never know what running back to start on their team and stuff. But I don't think they're going to like Seth Williams. Like the do your job Patriots, his main job as a wide receiver is to catch the ball. That's my biggest problem with him was he had one of the highest drop percentages in this class this year. I actually am higher on him than both of you. I actually think he provides a lot after the catch for a bigger guy that I didn't expect to see going into watching him. So I do kind of like him as like a late second rounder type prospect. But the guy that I really like to go to the Patriots is my wide receiver 7, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think
I like it.
This is my probably my favorite fit of any of the ones that I have on here. And the reason I like him is because I think they're building a running offense. They signed 2 tight ends in free agency. They bring back Cam Newton. They were rumored to be in on guys like Leonard Fournette and Chris Carson. So that they might add a running back at some point in the draft. They brought back their center, I believe, in free agency. I seriously think, and I'm going to die on this hill, they're going up to get Justin Fields or Trey Lance. Whoever falls, they're going to get him. Yeah. I seriously think it's going to happen. And both of those guys are dual threat quarterbacks that can do what Cam Newton can do as well. And I think with Amon-Ra St. Brown, you get a guy that is a great blocker for starters as a receiver. He can also provide you your Julian Edelman, obviously that you lost Julian Edelman to retirement. He can be your reliable, catch the ball, get some plays after the catch and move the chains. That's exactly what Amon-Ra St. Brown brings to the table. You can use him in the slot. He played a little bit on the outside this year. I really like that fit for them, and I think it's the type of player that they're really going to like as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'll get into the Amon-Ra spot later on, but his 2 spots were down to me between the team that I ended up picking and New England because I do see the potential fit here. They need just guys that you can rely on. And Amon-Ra, in terms of a day 2 receiver, is one of the most dependable guys in terms of knowing what you're going to get. I think he's going to be a really good wide receiver 2, 3 in the NFL for the foreseeable future. The thing that's always going to drag him down in terms of the potential draft capital is because he doesn't really have much of a ceiling after that. But regardless, from a New England Patriots perspective, needing guys that can just kind of fill in, especially as you mentioned, if they do trade up for a young quarterback, Amon-Ra would be a really good, perfect fit for them in developing that culture and that receiving core. So I definitely agree. So yeah.
Yeah. All right. So the Los Angeles Chargers, and you might see a different position group here. The Los Angeles Chargers are a team that probably needs a pass catcher of some kind. Angelo, do you have them going wide receiver, tight end? You got any kind of high draft capital player here?
I do. I actually have them. I have them trading up. I have them trading up to get Jalen Waddle. I think that would be kind of a match made in heaven.
Yes.
Either Waddle or Smith, but I think they're going to be enamored. I mean, Waddle and Smith aren't that far apart in terms of top end speed and those qualities, less than people think. But I do believe that they're going to be enamored with what he can do as a level 3 threat. And that is a huge part of Herbert's game. Jalen Guyton's fine, but Jalen Waddle is on a different level. So I think they trade up a potential partner, maybe 7 with the Lions. And I think with the defensive players are going to be falling, I know Campbell wants to kind of fortify that defense. The Lions obviously adding Okuda last year in last year's class was good. Guys like Parsons might fall. Like there's some interesting names that might fall the middle of the first round. But the Chargers trading up to get Jalen Waddle would certainly make a splash. And Keenan Allen and Jalen Waddle, I mean, that's a pretty great.
Austin Eckler too.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty great trio of weapons you have there for Herbert early on in his career. So I think going that route will be great. And for fantasy purposes, that's what you kind of want. You don't want Jalen Waddle to be the only guy in the NFL offense because that's not who he is, right? He's not going to even at Alabama, if you watch their tape, the coverage is more so drawn to Devonta Smith in terms of taking on the best cornerback of the defense and winning in one-on-one coverage. That's not Jalen Waddle. Doesn't have to be. He can be the Deshaun Jackson of an NFL offense and have a long career and be a pretty solid fantasy wide receiver with a fantastic ceiling. And getting with one of the best deep ball throwers in the league, especially this early on in his career, and Justin Herbert, man, that'd be fun to watch.
Heck, and even to a certain degree, again, don't get me wrong, Tyreek Hill is a different breed from everybody in the NFL from that regard. But let's not act like the NFL defenses don't put so much focus onto Travis Kelce as well. It's not a slight to say that this guy would work better in a tandem. Mm-hmm. If anything, that just goes to show that we can absolutely exploit his strengths on an NFL defense more if you have a possession guy to be able to take the attention of a defense. I fully agree. If the Chargers were able to get in draft capital position to take Jalen Waddle, he would be the perfect fit, in my opinion, because quite frankly, here, having a guy with the howitzer of Justin Herbert to be able to just connect with Jalen Waddle at that third level of the defense would be a home run. So I kind of went a different direction, though, because I don't think Waddle will be available to them. And I'm looking at that second round pick. You got on one hand, a guy in Jalen Waddle who would stretch the defense out and provide that third level threat. I actually went a different direction in terms of a yards after the catch, gadget type receiver. Obviously, Brandon Staley coming from the Rams, being able to use that Robert Woods type role in the offense. I'm looking at Rondale Moore. I'm looking at that second round pick, having that guy who can do a lot after the catch, use it in or around the line of scrimmage. You already have Keenan Allen and Mike Williams on the outside, letting Rondale Moore really develop. And Corey, your comp for him is Deontay Harris. Guess who their offensive coordinator is in LA? It's Joe Lombardi. Guess where he came from?
New Orleans Saints, who didn't use Deontay Harris nearly enough.
But that's what I mean. He could basically say, well, that was the decision of Sean Payton. Whenever Deontay Harris was able to touch the ball, whether it was in the punt return, kick return game, whether it was in the offense, he was making something happen. I think Rondale Moore's ceiling is above that. But in terms of efficiency, in terms of usage, you want him to fill that Robert Woods type role. You want him to return kicks. You want him to just be that presence on your offense that while a defense can't really denote a lot of resources against, but they know, oh, fuck, if we're not covering him, he can absolutely exploit us on any given touch, given his God-given abilities. Now, I don't think Rondale Moore is developed from a pure receiving standpoint yet. I still think he's got a ways work to do in terms of his second and third level ability, because quite frankly, in Purdue, he was not used in that regard nearly at all. But if you can really nurture him, let him kind of be that decoy, gadget type of role in your offense right off the bat, I think it can really add an element of this offense that they don't really have, and that's pure just juice after the catch. So I think Rondale Moore to the Chargers would be an awesome fit as well.
Yeah, I went in a totally different direction than you guys. You guys went with speed, explosiveness. I give him Hunter Long. He's my tight end too, and I don't care who knows it, because I think Hunter Long's the second best tight end in this class. I actually saw Matt Miller's on board with me. I saw he put out that Hunter Long's his tight end too as well. I think Hunter Long gives you everything that Pat Freiermuth gives you, except he is more dynamic, especially after the catch. So if you need a guy to replace Hunter Henry, and we know Hunter Henry was very fantasy relevant for a number of years, I think Hunter Long could go into a situation. He has Jared Cook, I believe, is the starting tight end there for this year, and then you could come in his second year once Jared Cook probably moves along out of Los Angeles, and he can come in and be the starting tight end in 2022. So tight ends matter too. I thought I'd give Hunter Long a shout out. But I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they did both things. If they took Jalen Waddle at 13, or they traded up to 8 or something and get Jalen Waddle, and they also take Hunter Long in the second or third round, and they add both, because you got a young quarterback right now. The best thing you can do is make his life as easy as possible. So I think all of those fits, I like all of them, to be honest, all the ones that we just said. So,
and they all do different things, which is crazy.
Yeah. So speaking of Rondale Moore, I have a feeling someone's going to put him here. The Green Bay Packers is the next team that we're going to talk about. Angelo, what do you got for Green Bay?
Hit the nail on the head. Yeah, I have Rondale Moore to Green Bay. And I think that's going to be the Randall Cobb fit of what Aaron Rodgers needs. He doesn't have a secondary target on that offense, and he desperately needs one. He needs a guy that's reliable after the catch, that he could potentially go to in the red zone. I think Rondale Moore can develop into that. He didn't really show much more than just a first level skill set at Purdue, which is the only true concern about his profile. He's obviously 5'7", 180, so he doesn't really profile anywhere other than the slot in the NFL, which is fine. Move him around, give him the ball in space, around the line of scrimmage. But no matter what, the defense has to have another like have something else to worry about other than Devontae Adams. So I think Rondale Moore gives you that. He gives you the dynamic playmaker that Randall Cobb was with Aaron Rodgers. And hopefully he's just as reliable so we can kind of have that fantasy floor and ceiling that we're kind of all hoping for.
Yeah, and you went with a first level threat. I kind of have a different type of compliment to Devontae Adams. I have them going with De'Ami Brown. Now, there's been recent buzz that apparently NFL teams are very high on De'Ami Brown, and somebody around the league, I saw it on Twitter. He's basically saying that he could sneak into the end of the first round. I'm thinking, what teams would be willing to take him there? And I think the Packers would head that list. In all honesty, you could look at the Browns and stuff, but I think the Packers would be an ideal fit for him simply because you got the physical after the catch. I mean, Devontae Adams can do everything well, let's be honest here, but you have that possession type receiver in Devontae Adams. Every single complimentary receiver that they have working down the field, none of them can consistently on a game-to-game basis provide you that threat. You have MVS every now and then going off, and then he has games where he's basically costing them the whole game. I believe it was against the Chargers this year, where he basically absolutely just costed them game with a crucial drop. You need that guy who can do that on a game-to-game basis, working at that third level of the field, and I think De'Ami Brown from the outside can do that for you in spades. You want to move Devontae Adams to the slot. Guess what? You still have a guy working on the outside. You want to keep Devontae Adams at the X. Guess what? You can move De'Ami Brown to the Z. You have multiple things that you can do with this guy. And I think personally, around NFL Twitter in general, prior to this tweet, he was not getting a lot of buzz in general. He is currently my wide receiver 6. So although I personally wouldn't see him at the end of the first round, if he's getting that buzz, I think he's well worth the pick because after those top 4 and Elijah Moore, I think he is the absolute next guy up. And getting him here to pair as that wide receiver 2 behind Adams, I think would be a home run for Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. So yeah, I would absolutely love it. And if it happened on draft night, he could sneak into my top 5 for my wide receiver rankings, in all honesty.
For sure.
Yeah. I went in the same direction as Angelo, but not Rondale Moore. I actually compared a guy directly to Randall Cobb, and that was Kadarius Toney. So that's the guy I went with to the Green Bay Packers. I know Danny and I aren't the highest on Kadarius Toney. No. I'm not sure what your stance is on him either. We know his profile is terrible. Everybody knows his profile is terrible, but the guy can play. Like he definitely has some talent. He provides a lot after the catch. He's a tough player. He's dynamic, and the Green Bay Packers don't have a dynamic player on their offense that can affect the first and second level of the defense. And Kadarius Toney, much like what Rondale Moore could provide, also does that. So whether it's in the end of the first round where they pick Kadarius Toney, whether the NFL's a bit lower on Kadarius Toney and he goes in the second round or something like that, I think Kadarius Toney and Rondale Moore kind of accomplish the same type of role for Aaron Rodgers in that Randall Cobb mold 100%. That he hasn't had in a while.
Yeah, fully agree.
All right, so let's try and motor through a couple of these now that we're closing out on the end of the first round type of players. We got the New Orleans Saints. They could also address the wide receiver pass catcher position in some regard, now saying goodbye to Drew Brees. Angelo, do you got him going early for the pass catcher?
I do. I have them going for Terrace Marshall. I think they need a second option other than, Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas. I like Traquan Smith, but I think they need a true second option to take some pressure off Thomas. And I think that's Marshall. I think that'd be a good fit for them, especially with Jameis under center, chucking the ball downfield. I think that'd be a fun fantasy option there too, because that's not a role that Michael Thomas plays. Michael Thomas is not he's a level 2 threat. That's what he is. He works in the intermediate areas of the field. He's a first down monster. If you have Alvin Kamara running a ton of angle and option routes, you need a guy down the field, to be relevant. And I think that's going to be Marshall in that offense. I don't know what happens with Marshall's medicals. That's kind of what got flagged. And that's, I think, the reason I actually had him potentially going 12 to the Eagles. I thought they were going to just make a splash and do it because they need that, that X receiver mold type guy, even though Marshall profiles more as a big slot type player early on in his career. Yep. But with his medicals getting flagged, I think teams aren't going to take that risk early on in the first round, mid first round too. I think he kind of falls the 25 to 35. And I think that's kind of where, we're going to see the New Orleans Saints swoop in and pick them up.
Yeah, nailed it. Terrace Marshall Saints, that's the exact same fit I have. I mean, you basically covered everything to a T. You need that guy that can work down the field, that bigger body. And Terrace Marshall can provide an element to this offense that simply they don't have at this point. You got Traquan Smith, you got Deontay Harris, whatever, with the speed element, but you don't necessarily have that guy with both the size and the speed that Terrace Marshall kind of combines. You mentioned Michael Thomas can work that second level of the field. You got Alvin Kamara working out of the backfield or in the slot. You need that guy that Jameis Winston can just say, YOLO, let's chuck it up and hope for the best. And Terrace Marshall can give you that type of presence down the field. So I absolutely agree. Terrace Marshall, Saints, 28th overall pick, makes a ton of sense for him to land here.
Yep. Yeah, and you guys, as a Bucs fan, I know what Jameis Winston does well, and it's size downfield because he does like throwing downfield, but he can't throw to little guys downfield like Deshaun Jackson. So I went in the same direction, but not the same player. I picked De'Ami Brown to go here because I think De'Ami Brown is he's a bigger receiver for a deep threat, but he's also not the same size as Terrace Marshall. So either way, I think a deep threat type option with some size to it is definitely the direction that they should go in if they choose to take a receiver at 27, 28, wherever they're picking. Because I do think that's definitely the biggest need of their offense, and I think it's what Jameis Winston does well, who I expect to win the starting job because
yes, please.
It doesn't make any sense to have Taysom Hill as a starter because then Jameis Winston's on the bench when you could use both if Jameis is the starter. Anyways, we have the Arizona Cardinals up next, and I may have peeked at your sheet, Angelo, so I know who you have going here, and I have to tell you right now, there's no chance in hell he gets down this far.
You know what? It's one of those things I wrestled with because I'm like, there's going to be a player at the position at wide receiver in this year's class that gets the CeeDee Lamb treatment. For whatever reason, CeeDee Lamb did not go as early as everybody thought he would go. I think it's Devontae Smith. I think in this year's class, I think, the size concerns, which are just a misnomer. I think it's going to be him. There's going to be one, and I think he's going to be the guy to fall outside the top 10. That's going to be a big trade-up candidate. I think teams are going to want to trade up and go get him. But in that trade-up mold, I think the Arizona Cardinals and Cliff Kingsbury are going to want another playmaker. And they need one for Kyler Murray's development. What do they have besides Hopkins?
AJ Green, man. Yeah.
AJ Green? AJ Green, this is not 8 years ago. I mean, Christian Kirk. I mean, I like Christian Kirk coming out of A&M too, but he's not the reliable target that Kyler Murray needs.
Fantasy Twitter darling, eh?
Yeah, we're dragging them all through the mud right now. Jalen Reagor, N'Keal Harry, Christian Kirk, they're all the analytics darlings are getting dragged through the mud.
Dude,
right
AJ
now.
Green bounce back, man. Top 20 potential.
Could be. I mean, shoot. But yeah, man. I don't think he falls to 16 quite where the Cardinals are picking, but I think he's a trade-up candidate if he falls past the Eagles at 12. I think that 13 to 16 mold, similar to Jalen Waddle, I think Waddle's going to go earlier. I think he'll go between 7. I think, I'd say even 6 and 10. But I think he's a trade-up candidate too for similar reason. You need a prospect at that position to kind of take the load off your star. And I think Devontae Smith can function on his own if he went to the Lions. That's a good pick at 7. But I also think Kingsbury needs to save his job.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to need to get a guy who can help out Hopkins, who can help out Murray. It can get that passing game functioning at a little bit higher of a level. And I think that's going to be Devontae Smith.
I like it. I know I'm excited for round 1 just to see what type of moves are happening.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun. Yeah, man.
For me, I actually have the Cardinals going with a tight end because, quite frankly, that position for them is just basically unaccounted for at this now. I mean, they lost Dan Arnold, so who's even slated to start for them? That's Max Williams. So, not great because
nope.
That being said, I actually have them going with Pat Freiermuth and really getting that possession type of target down the seam. Now you got the speed of Kirk, you got the speed of Isabella, you got the quote-unquote presence of AJ Green, and let's be honest here, you don't really have anybody else you can rely upon in that offense aside from DeAndre Hopkins. getting a guy in Pat Freiermuth, who I actually have compared to Zach Ertz, can be that type of guy in your offense, can give you some versatility in the red zone, can really be that safety blanket for Kyler Murray that, quite frankly, he has needed really since he's gotten into the NFL. Now, Hopkins took a lot of that load last year, but you need something else. You mentioned it. You hit the nail on the head with Devonta Smith being that guy. You need a presence where on third down, if you know DeAndre Hopkins is getting bracketed, who are you going to rely upon to convert? Pat Freiermuth could really be that presence for you in the middle of the field. So I really like the fit for them here.
I gave him my guy. Tamori Terry is my wide receiver 8, so I gave him Tamori Terry.
Yeah, I like it.
I believe the Tamori Terry of 2019 is not lost. I think he's the real Tamori Terry, and the guy that we saw last year was injured, just like Chuba Hubbard and just like a number of other prospects that we've seen come back before they were supposed to come back. And I think Tamori Terry, we're always talking about slot receivers on the Cardinals. Do you notice that we're always like, well, is Larry Fitzgerald going to play the slot, or is Christian Kirk going to no, let's get him an outside receiver. Like, Jesus, let's give him Tamori Terry. He doesn't have to play right away. He's got the ghost of AJ Green ahead of him on the depth chart when he comes in. So once AJ Green sprains his knee and is out for the rest of the season in week 3, then Tamori Terry, after he's had a bit of time to get his legs under him in the NFL, can come in and blow the league up like he's going to. So I like Tamori Terry to the Cardinals. I also think he's a great fit in a number of other spots that are in need of a deep threat, like Green Bay, like New Orleans. I think he could fit a number of those teams as well. I have a feeling, I know where Danny put him. He could also fit that team as well. So I'm just guessing off the top of my head. But yeah, the Cardinals are a team that they're kind of odd. I could see them going early at receiver. I could see them not picking one at all. Like, I have no idea what they're going to do at the position.
What color uniforms do you think I put Tamori Terry?
White and blue. Did I get it?
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So we got the New York Jets up next. And the New York Jets are an interesting team. They need a lot of things, much like a lot of bad teams in the NFL. So, Angelo, what do you got for the Jets?
I have them going Brevin Jordan. I think they Chris Herndon. It's the ship sailed. The ship. Out. No, dude, seriously, pour it out because he was
so sad.
In my home league last year. I drafted him super late, and I'm like, this is it. This is the year. And he was my tight end 1, like, on my team, and I'm like, this is the year, man.
It's the same for us.
The most viewed video on this channel has Chris Herndon on the thumbnail.
No, yes. I mean, that's for good reason.
Jerick McKinnon.
Yeah, but I think they need a weapon at tight end.
Yes. They
need a safety blanket other than Jamison Crowder. Jamison Crowder is pretty often injured. And that's the tough thing about that offense is that offense kind of went as Jamison Crowder went because he was really dominant when he was on the field. Yeah. But I think they need someone else to carry the load after the catch. And I think that is going to be Brevin Jordan. I'm a big fan of his game. I think his stock has dropped pretty significantly after, his pro day just tanked. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, I had Brevin Jordan putting up really good athletic numbers, nothing close to what I thought he was going to do. I think at 66 in the 3rd round is where we see Brevin Jordan go off the board to the Jets. I think that's a good fit for them. I don't know, how he's going to work with Wilson, but I don't know if anyone knows he's going to work with Wilson, how he's going to work there and how Wilson's going to do in that atmosphere, assuming Wilson gets drafted by the Jets. We're kind of at that point where all of us are kind of assuming it's a foregone conclusion that it's not Justin Fields. But to go back to Jordan, man, I think it's a good fit in that offense. I think they need a tight end to succeed. And look what kind of offense they're running now. They're running a Shanahan-style offense. George Kittle was an absolute star in that offense. I am not saying Brevin Jordan's going to be George Kittle, but look at how the similarities to their game in terms of stylistically. Both are huge after catch monsters. Obviously, Kittle's a phenomenal blocker. Jordan's good, not that great, but after the catch is where they use their tight ends to their advantage. And I think that's a really good, good fit for Jordan, good fit for New York.
You basically hit every point that I was going to make for Brevin Jordan because I have the exact same fit yet again. We're just kind of in sync right now, Brevin Jordan, you mentioned it. This offense last year, once Jamison Crowder got hurt, was just unable to move the ball, quite frankly. And if Jamison Crowder were to get hurt and you have a guy like Brevin Jordan who played 62% of his snaps in the slot this year, can be that prototypical yards after the catch move tight end for your offense. And you mentioned it. coming from a Kyle Shanahan system, Mike LaFleur needs that type of weapon who can do stuff after the catch. And Brevin Jordan, in my opinion, in this entire class, apart from Kyle Pitts, because he's just a different breed, is the best after the catch tight end. So if he landed here, you mentioned 66th overall pick is a very good spot to take him. There's not much competition for him to have a significant role right away. In all honesty, I think he could profile as that fantasy tight end too, even as a rookie. Honestly, I think he could be a top 12 to 15 tight end option if he landed with the Jets and they didn't add any significant receiving help outside of him in the draft. So I fully agree.
Yeah, I actually I got Seth Williams here. I think the Jets are such a weird receiving core because you mentioned Jamison Crowder, the offense went as he went, but that's an Adam Gase offense. Adam Gase is always just overused as slot receivers for some reason. We saw Jarvis Landry got like absolutely peppered in Miami when he was there.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I think with Seth Williams, you get the chance that he becomes a prototypical X receiver. You have Corey Davis, who is more apt to be a number 2 receiver. We obviously saw that this past year. You have Denzel Mims, who's kind of just like a deep threat at this point, what I think he can become. And then Jamison Crowder, again, more of like a slot guy. So I think with Seth Williams, you get the chance at a number 1 receiver, but I honestly think where they're picking at 23 is kind of a bad spot to be picking because they're going to miss out on Rashad Bateman. I think they're going to miss out on the guy because I think Bateman would be the perfect fit for what they need. And I don't
agree,
think they're going to chance to get him.
100%.
Yeah.
So the next team we got here is the Baltimore Ravens. And this is another one that I have never heard this fit one time being mentioned, the one that I have. And I'm really excited about this one, but you guys can go ahead and talk about who you got for the Ravens.
Man, okay, it's interesting now because I did this pre-trade, so now it's kind of post-trade, and now we're looking at what's going to go on because they have 2 shots in the first round now.
Mm-hmm.
They have 2 chances, and I think it's Diami Brown is one of them. I think there's a chance they take 2 receivers. I mean, that's how bad their receiving core is and devoid of true talent. I like Marquise Brown a good bit, but he's not the number 1 receiver of an NFL offense. That's not who he is. I think they need an X receiver. I think Brown gives them that. He's a great downfield presence. He's a great contested catch guy. He's kind of what everybody wanted James Washington to be. When he came out of Oklahoma State and we saw the prolific numbers and we're like, oh my gosh, this guy's going to be this massive downfield threat. Even though he's not that fast, I think that's kind of the same vein that I see Brown in, but actually living up to that hype. So I think it's going to be an interesting fit. And I also see Antonio Brown reuniting with his cousin.
I hope so. That's
fun. Something I see. Think of that receiving core. Brown, Andrews, Brown. Then you have Dobbins out of the backfield. You know what I mean? Like you have options there on offense that they didn't have before. So I have Diami Brown going there. I mean, you have 3 Browns and Andrews, and that'd be a nice offense for me. I'd be excited about that if I was a Lamar Jackson manager. So I think that's kind of where I have them going. I think Diami Brown's going to go earlier than we think he's going to go. I think there's a chance he goes ahead of some of the guys that we really like in this class, like Rondale Moore is one of them. I think in the first round, the 2 guys that are going to go earlier than I think we all want them to are Kadarius Toney and Diami Brown.
I mean, I wouldn't mind if Diami Brown went early, but yeah, definitely. Again, when we released the mock draft, it was before the trade was done.
Sure.
So a lot of these were prepped before because we prepped it around the time we did our mock. And we didn't really I had them attacking the position later on for reference. And you mentioned this guy's name earlier. I think Amari Rodgers could be a really good fit for them too. A guy who can profile underneath, give them that yards after catch element, kind of be that Deebo Samuel presence that really Lamar Jackson needs. You mentioned the limitations of a Marquise Brown. I don't think he's ever going to be that number 1 weapon in an offense. So why not make it? I don't want to say wide receiver by committee, but Amari Rodgers can work that first level for you. Marquise Brown can work that third level for you. And hopefully if Sammy Watkins is healthy, he can be that second level threat for you while still being a complement to what Mark Andrews can do down the field as well.
Yeah.
So I do think that Amari Rodgers gives them a lot of what they don't have right now. And that's a guy that you can throw it to on the first level and just let him say, hey, yo, go get whatever you can after the catch and be that guy. Because let's be honest here, that guy is built like a running back. And when he has that ball in the open field, guess what? He is getting that yards after the catch that sorely no real other presence on this offense really has at this point. So I really like the fit of Amari Rodgers. You mentioned third round type draft capital. I think makes a ton of sense. They could possibly be that team at the end of the second that says, you know what? We like Amari Rodgers enough. Screw it. We have 2 first round picks to address other needs. Let's take Amari Rodgers in the second and move on.
Yeah, and you get a tough physical guy too that can help you as a blocker as well with Amari Rodgers, and you can use him in the backfield if you need to. Another guy that's used in the backfield that I mentioned before, I don't think I've ever seen anyone talk about this fit. I think we can all agree that whatever receiver gets drafted by the Ravens, it's not a good landing spot for them because Lamar Jackson has limitations, right? He's not the greatest thrower of the football. He doesn't throw with the high degree of difficulty throws that we see from guys like Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert and all these guys that are making these tough throws to get their receivers the ball. Let's get him a guy who's used to making their quarterback's life easy. This is where I put Rondale Moore, was to the Baltimore Ravens. So
makes sense.
I think you have an identity as a running team, right? You have Mark Andrews as like your only reliable pass catching option. You have a deep threat with Hollywood Brown. Let's get you a guy that can, like you said with Amari Rodgers, make things happen after the catch, but we can use Rondale Moore and integrate him into our rushing attack if we even need to, because I think he has that kind of versatility. And I think the Ravens coaching staff has shown in the past that they're really apt at putting position players who maybe have some limitations in positions to be their best selves. And I think they could do that with Rondale Moore.
Same idea, just different player. Yeah.
That'd be a good fit. I think because Lamar Jackson's limited as a passer, right? So I think it's you have to give him a true, first level threat. I mean, you need a guy like that in that offense for it to thrive because, I mean, the threat of Lamar Jackson as a runner is so prolific, right? He's the best running quarterback in the game today, but he's limited as a passer, especially on timing throws. So honestly, man, I think that's a perfect fit. Rondale Moore be great there.
I don't think it affects his stock either. Like if Rondale Moore went there, I wouldn't be like mad. Like I wouldn't be like, because if Terrace Marshall goes there, I think it's a big hit to Terrace Marshall.
I agree. I think it'd be a hit to. I have Diamond Brown there. I think it's a hit to Brown too because that's not who the Ravens are. But I think it fits in. Rondale Moore fits into them as an extension of the running game, which is huge for that offense. So I like that fit a ton.
Yeah. All right. So. Again, we're going a little long on these, but I think this is a good discussion, so I don't even really care that much. So we're going with the Tennessee Titans next. Yes. I guarantee we all have the same player going here. We might not have to spend that much time on this. I know me and Danny have the same player.
Me and him have the same player, and I think you do too.
Elijah Moore. Yeah. I mean, for crying out loud, that bring back the Ole Miss connection.
Wide receiver 5.
I mean, for crying out loud. I mean, he's going to be good. Like on AGS, I think I have him as a above average NFL starter. I think that's what he is. I don't know if he's a Pro Bowl caliber player, but my God, the guy is going to be an absolute, godsend for Ryan Tannehill, if that's the case. I'm extremely excited to watch him play. They need a big time slot receiver. Adam Humphries is Adam Humphries. You know what I mean? Like
he's not even there anymore.
I know I know that. I mean, that's who he was. He was just Adam. Yeah. He was a dude. But they need a big time guy at that position. I don't think Ryan Tannehill's had that in Tennessee. That prolific speed and the ability to win after the catch, the ability to win on timing routes. I think Elijah Moore, fantastic fit in Tennessee.
Their current wide receiver 2 and 3 is Josh Reynolds and Cameron Batson for the record.
It's not good.
So Elijah Moore can step in right away. You got that Ole Miss connection between him and A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown's going to want this guy to be a Titan. And guess what? If he's there at 22nd overall, I think the pick is in because quite frankly, it's a need in the offense. Elijah Moore is, in my opinion, the wide receiver 5 in this class with the first round grade. Just make it happen. Give A.J. Brown that guy that he can just, mess around with, catch some passes with, just fully grow with, to be honest, because we know how good A.J. Brown is. Elijah Moore could add an element to this offense that, typically speaking, you wouldn't expect from, quite frankly, anybody else in this range. Like, honest to God, like I'm looking at it. People want to compare him to like Rondale Moore, Kadarius Toney. Elijah Moore has the versatility to play inside out. he showed this year that he can play on the outside if he's needed to, while A.J. Brown is manning the slot. So overall, I think Elijah Moore, from the overall, I know said overall, sorry, I'm not going to mention that again, standpoint, can be that number 2 weapon. Sorry, I rambled on a little bit. I'm just super excited right now, and I would literally freak out the way I did about the CD pick if Elijah Moore landed as a tight end. That's how much I love this guy.
Yeah, Danny's video freaking out to the CD Lamb pick is the funniest thing on the internet. This is my guy. I've been on Elijah Moore since December. He's been like my top, like my 4th or 5th receiver in this class since December. I think you walk into so much vacated production from a fantasy perspective. Jonnu Smith no longer there. Corey Davis no longer there. I love this fit. I think it's the best fit of any player prospect in this entire exercise that we're doing. And my favorite comparison in this draft is Elijah Moore to Tyler Lockett. It's my favorite comparison. I've seen big guys steal it from me. I had it in December. So
yeah,
that's like my favorite thing about this draft cycle is everybody's caught up on Elijah Moore. It's my favorite thing about this entire draft cycle. So
being early. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's get him to Tennessee. It's where he belongs. Okay. So staying in the AFC South, let's go to the Indianapolis Colts. And there's one big name receiver we haven't talked about yet. And I'm going to talk about it. I don't know if any of you guys are. I think I know where both of you put Rashad Bateman, but Angelo, who do you got to Indianapolis?
I have Kadarius Toney. I'm not a huge Toney fan because he reminds me a lot of Tariq Cohen. I'm a Bears fan, obviously. Yeah. Just very limited as a receiver. As a pure receiver, just a ton of limitations. But you just got to give him the ball. Like, you just want to give him
a pick for the Bears. Like, if the Bears pick Kadarius Toney, is that the worst possible?
Bro, you saw my tweet. Like, did you see my tweet?
I didn't. I'm just asking.
Oh my God. I memed my dog. It was fantastic. But doomsday scenario is Rashad Bateman being on the board at 20 and them taking Kadarius Toney.
I just saw it now.
I would be irate because someone brought it up to me and one of my buddies was like, so what happens if they take Kadarius Toney? If they take Kadarius Toney, I'll be gone for weeks. Like, you won't hear from me. I'll be so upset. It's not that I don't like Kadarius Toney. He's just one of those guys like Tariq Cohen. You just have to give him the football, not because they earn it by themselves, if that makes sense. Like, he doesn't win on his own. And like in the NFL, I don't think he will do that. I mean, as an outside receiver, definitely not. In the slot, maybe, but he doesn't have the greatest of hands, not a hands catcher. But man, it's just I think the Colts is a decent fit because I think it gives Wentz kind of an outlet.
I don't think the Colts are going to pick this guy in the first round. They're smarter than that.
Yeah, please.
I hope they don't. I hope they don't. But
I think he's a second round receiver. I don't buy the first round buzz.
Angelo, you
should. NFL teams think he's a first round pick.
You should hope that the Colts do, so the Bears don't have to make the choice.
I know. I mean,
they pick one pick
after that.
Yeah.
So if the Bears, so I mean, the thing is, like, I don't think Tony's a first round pick, but I've seen him get taken as high as pick 15.
Yeah, and I've seen Washington too at 19.
Yeah, so it's like, I mean, the NFL knows all, right? So we'll find out. But I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if we see him in a Colts uniform.
Gosh, yeah, the whole yuck. That you mentioned doomsday scenario. That's like if the Cowboys with like Surtain, Horn, and Pitts on the board took like Christian Barmore. Like I would not be seen on Twitter for
Christian Barmore. He's also my doomsday scenario. We pick at 32.
Yeah. So with that being said, Corey kind of alluded to it when we mentioned Tamorrion Terry earlier, but I think he would be an ideal fit. You mentioned that third level threat. They don't really have that guy if T.Y. Hilton is not on the field. If T.Y. Hilton is hurt, you got Paris Campbell as that after the catch type guy. You have Michael Pittman as that prototypical size possession. Let's get Tamorrion Terry, a guy that can work down the field, to be a weapon for Carson Wentz. You mentioned Carson Wentz, when he's had adequate help, has been an above average quarterback in this league. Let's give him every opportunity to reclaim that status because, quite frankly, whether it was the mental side of it or the coaching or whatever it was in Philly, something just clicked off of him. Let's get him adequate help so that he can really feel confident again. Play like that Carson Wentz that we saw in 2017, 18, and 2019. So I think Tamori and Terry would do really well for them. You mentioned a 3rd-round type pick. I think could be a good spot for him. He has that size, that speed, that downfield ability to really be a good outlet for Carson Wentz, especially if T.Y. Hilton is not on the field.
Yeah, and I think if you have T.Y. Hilton still in place, he re-signed a 1-year deal, so Tamori and Terry could come in and learn behind T.Y. Hilton in that situation too. I think Tamori and Terry, to me, when you saw Carson Wentz at his best was in 2017, and he had Torrey Smith with the Philadelphia Eagles, and he was playing really well. And that was the last time the Eagles had a consistent field stretcher. The next year, they went out and tried to sign Mike Wallace. He got injured really early. They traded for Deshaun Jackson. He couldn't stay on the field. Carson Wentz hasn't had a consistent deep threat in a long time, and Tamori and Terry could provide him that, and he also provides him some size as well. So I really like that fit too. Like, any team that needs a deep threat that's a big playmaker that could potentially even turn into a number 1 receiver, I think Tamori and Terry fits all of those teams, and the Colts 100%. Are definitely one of them. I have Rashad Bateman here. I think the Colts are going to make up for the Eagles not being aggressive enough last year by trading up for Rashad Bateman, and they're going to secure him for Carson Wentz because the Eagles should have done it last year with CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson. They should have secured him one of those guys, and they didn't do that. So I think they're going to be like, hey, Carson Wentz needs his number 1 target. Rashad Bateman, I think, is a tier break in this draft. As much as I do love Elijah Moore, I think Elijah Moore is more equipped to be a number 1B or number 2 receiver. Rashad Bateman can be a number 1 receiver, and I think the Colts are going to recognize that.
Yeah, no, I like the fit as well. With that being said, what is the next team on the list here?
Okay, yeah, so we're getting more into the territory of teams that may take a receiver. Maybe they just need some depth. Maybe it's like a futuristic move. And we're going to talk about the Cleveland Browns here. I think for sure this year, because they brought back Rashard Higgins, they still have Odell Beckham coming off of the injury. They have Jarvis Landry obviously still in place, and they took Donovan Peoples-Jones last year. So right now it's a crowded receiver room, but we all know with Odell Beckham, anything can change anytime soon. If they win 7 games this year, Odell Beckham probably going to request a trade or something. So this could be more of a futuristic pick. And if a receiver does land in Cleveland, I think it's an underratedly good landing spot because I think the coaching staff knows what they're doing, and I think it's a great situation. So, Angelo, who do you got going to Cleveland if they do select a pass catcher?
Yeah, I think for me it's at 59. I think the biggest thing is to run first offense. We know that, right? Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's the best run blocking receiver in this class. He's a tough guy. He's going to kind of fit right into that, possession receiver mold at the NFL level. Who's going to fight for yards after the catch. I think it's a good fit. I don't know if they take a receiver at 59. I think they wait, if anything, to the 3rd round at least, until pick 92. But we'll see. I mean, I think it's a good fit for that offense. It's a good fit for Nick Chubb and, Kareem Hunt. And that offensive line, kind of an extension of that and helping out the run game first and foremost. But I think Amon-Ra St. Brown's an underrated receiver prospect. He's just one of those guys that is going to be probably an above average NFL wide receiver. I don't think he's going to be anything crazy. I think I think Danny, you said it earlier, wide receiver 2, 3 in an NFL offense. And I think that's what he is. But I think he's going to be a reliable one who will have a long NFL career.
Yeah, I have the exact same fit. Let's get St. Brown to the Browns. And quite frankly, even if Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry are still on the roster, the volatility of Odell Beckham on a game-to-game basis in terms of he's always dealing with something, or he might miss this game, he might miss that game, whatever. They don't necessarily have that proven number 3 that can really handle the load if that happened. Now, Rashard Higgins and Donovan Peoples-Jones, I think, are fine complementary type receivers, but I don't really want to rely on them if a guy like Odell Beckham is not on the field. You mentioned it. Amon-Ra St. Brown, you know what you're getting. I mentioned earlier, wide receiver 2-3. I think he could really fill into that role. Odell Beckham misses a game. He could be that wide receiver 2 after Jarvis Landry. Odell Beckham's on the field. Guess what? You throw him on the other side. He could be that wide receiver 3 for your offense. I think he can really profile as that consistent year-to-year, like 800 type, 900 type receiving yard receiver. And for a team like Cleveland to get that type of value at 59 to really complement, again, what they do on offense. You mentioned the run blocking ability. Fantastic run blocker, physical at the point of attack, can stack DBs without fucking any complication whatsoever. And for a team that just wants to run the ball the way Cleveland does, having that type of value on the outside that nobody really mentions a lot is just crucial for this team. So I think that would be a fantastic fit for them. A guy who can, as you mentioned, play inside out, can play at that Z role. He can play inside if you need him to. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is that Swiss Army knife of the class in terms of dependability. So, yeah, Cleveland Browns, I absolutely love it at 59 overall. Makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, and ARSB is a guy that he's my wide receiver 7 now, but he could very well tumble down my rankings if he lands in a spot like Cleveland, because I don't think it would be a good landing spot for him from a fantasy perspective, because there's a lot of mouths to feed. And I think the role that you ideally want in a ceiling situation for ARSB is the role that Jarvis Landry has. So
100%.
That would be a little bit of a bad landing spot in my opinion for him. But I have a guy in Dwayne Eskridge who's a guy that I'm not very high on because of, his profile is not the greatest in the world, and he broke out super late and all the factors that you've heard about Dwayne Eskridge. But that core, when you look at it on paper, is not one that has a lot of speed, right? So I think you bring in a speed guy like Dwayne Eskridge, you can use him on special teams at the very least, if not get him involved as a wide receiver 3-4 in the offense. I don't think they invest very highly in this position. I think this is probably like a 3rd, 4th round pick for them. And they can use DPJ and Dwayne Eskridge as their complementary guys behind the top 3 guys in Higgins.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense in my opinion as well. And that's just an element of the offense. You can add that speed that Eskridge brings. I really like it. That being said, Corey, what's the next team on the list?
Yeah, we got Kansas City, and these guys are low on the list. I mean, they could go early at receiver, but again, they don't have a 1st-round pick anymore, and they don't pick until, 40-something now in the draft?
Dude, it's yeah. They're picking late, so
yeah. So who do you got?
Man, I have someone they're gonna pick. I think he's a trade up candidate for them in the late 3rd round, or if he falls to the 4th round. Tamarion Terry. I think that's kind of the dream fit, and I've said it before. Imagine how high he's going to go in rookie drafts if he goes to the Chiefs.
I hate that. As a Tamarion Terry truther, I would hate that landing spot.
Same here.
All of my value is gone.
Exactly. But I'm a big fan of Terry. I've been a big fan for a couple years. I think he's one of those players that got knocked down by this year's draft process and got knocked down by the COVID year. He wasn't healthy at any time. And I think he's a dynamic downfield threat that can develop into a pretty dang good NFL player. Carries a lot of risk with injury. And also the production profile is very up and down. But I think in a place like Kansas City that is really devoid of that 3rd target, Edwards-Helaire, I think, is going to provide a nice boost in the passing game. But they need another outside receiver that can do some damage. And I think that's Terry. And I think he's going to be a trade-up candidate for them in the 3rd or 4th round.
They're devoid of size in that core now.
100%.
Watkins gone now, right? They got Tyreek Hill and McCole Hardman and a bunch of, I don't know if Byron Pringle or something still there, but they don't have a lot of size.
Yeah, Byron Pringle's starting for them now, which is
they don't have a lot of size in that receiving core. So a guy like Terry makes a lot of sense. A guy like I don't know. You want to jump me, Danny? Who do you got?
I just kind of went with what their really bread and butter is, and
I know where you're going. I think.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the draft capital, early 40s. I don't buy the 1st-round hype on this guy, so I could see him filling in here. And man, I just can see them wanting to add Kadarius Toney to this team.
Wait, when are they? I think don't they pick 63 now?
Yeah.
No, sorry, 58. 58. It's 58.
Okay,
I think it's 58. Yeah. But even so, Toney could be there.
I just see them wanting another guy that just kind of fits with their offenses. You got that possession guy with Travis Kelce. You got the movement guys down the field with Hardman and Hill. They might want that guy who can do it after the catch as well with Kadarius Toney, because McCole Hardman can do it after the catch, but he's mostly used down the field. Tyreek Hill can do both. Now you got Kadarius Toney that can operate on that 1st level and be that, 3rd guy that. I don't know. I just see them wanting to take this guy. I don't like it at all, but I see KC saying, you know what, this is the archetype we built, similar to what San Francisco's got, where they got a bunch of yards after catch receivers. They might just say, well, let's just get all the lightning in the bottle receivers and take a guy like Kadarius Toney.
I would love this fit because it would push better players down the board for me in rookie draft, because I wouldn't touch Kadarius Toney with a 10-foot pole if he landed in Kansas City.
Yeah, I wouldn't touch him either. The reason why I have him match made here is because I see KC being that team says, you know what, we're better than the rest of the NFL. We got our tackle. Let's have fun. Let's add another threat, another weapon, another toy for Patrick Mahomes to really have fun with. And
that'd be brutal for CEH too.
Yeah, because
I think the thing is with Toney is he's kind of like this multi-positional threat who's in line up in the backfield. Like I said, kind of like a slightly better version of Tariq Cohen. Because I'm a Bears fan, obviously, and was 2 years ago when the Bears actually started Tariq Cohen at slot receiver when Anthony Miller got injured. It was the first game of the year against Green Bay.
I remember that. Targets that game.
18 targets.
14 targets. And he least efficient slot receiver in the NFL graded out as. No, it's like, what are you doing? And I think that's kind of where we're gonna see Kadarius Toney fall into that mold of you gotta give him the ball because he's dynamic, but like he can't do it himself. And I think I'd be from my CEH shares, I'd be very upset. But I can kind of see the fit. If you can develop Toney, he can turn to a pretty decent player, I think, because of how dynamic he is after the catch and what he can do as a route runner in terms of, how dramatic he is in his movement and how easily he can break away from one-on-one coverage. But he's a developmental piece.
Yeah.
So
I don't understand the first round hype whatsoever.
Dude, I've seen so many. It's ridiculous. I'm like,
I don't buy it. I think it's a media thing. I don't think it's an NFL thing.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah,
I currently have. Let me just see. I believe
he's like my wide receiver 13, so he's not. He's nowhere near the first round for me.
I have a late 2 on him, and he's my wide receiver 12. So
yeah, he's a third round player for me. Yeah. So when you talk about the Chiefs, I don't even remember. We talked about Kadarius Toney so long. Who did you say, Angelo, for yours? It was something to do with size, right?
Oh, for the Chiefs, I had
Terry. Right.
Terry,
okay. Yeah. So I also have size, and you mentioned this guy earlier as a guy who might slip because of his medicals. I think Terrace Marshall might slip to Kansas City.
Really?
At their 40 whatever pick that they got from the Ravens in return for that trade. Whether it's that pick or their other. Do they have 2 second-round picks now? Is that how it works? Is that what happened?
Yeah. So they got the one from the Ravens.
Yeah, because they got two from the Ravens.
So they have. Yeah. So right now I have it written down. They have 58 and 63, if I'm correct.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, either way, I think Terrace Marshall has a chance he gets to that range of the draft if the medicals are a problem. Maybe they trade up. They have 2 second-round picks. Maybe they go and make a move for him. But either way, I think, like you said with Tamori and Terry, I think he adds an element of size. He also fits their speed profile that they like in their receiver prospects. So I think Terrace Marshall also makes a lot of sense for Kansas City, and he's probably a guy I would avoid in rookie drafts if he went to Kansas City because he's my wide receiver 10 right now. So I'm not even really that high on him to begin with. Yeah. Let alone if he went to a hype landing spot like that.
No, it's interesting because I think we can kind of see a Denzel Mims type drop.
That's exactly who my comparison is for him.
And that's the funny thing because with him, I think he's pretty good. I think he has Pro Bowl caliber upside. Like I think he can be a very good NFL player. But it's a what if. Like he's probably the riskiest, like tier 3 guy I have in there. With like Jalen Waddle and Rondale Moore, like Tylan Wallace falls in that range for me too. Like all those guys carry some significance of risk, and his is the medicals. Like if he doesn't check out medically, we could see that. Denzel Mims was supposed to be a first round pick.
Yeah.
Like supposed to be in the 20s. He was supposed to be.
He was supposed to go to Green Bay at 30 or whatever it was. Like
every mock draft. People were mocking him to the Eagles when Rager was selected.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be like him, Jefferson, and Rager were all supposed to be early 20s wide receivers, but we saw him just continue to fall, and we don't know why yet. But I think we can see that same thing with Marshall potentially. He's a very talented player, but if the medicals are that concerning, we're gonna know. And it's going to be pretty evident that if he falls to the 50s, a guy that was mocked in in the late teens, early 20s falls to 58, like that is not a good sign. And someone you would probably avoid him in your rookie drafts. You would have to. If you see a guy, the NFL tells you, they don't lie. They have experts.
I didn't listen with Hakeem Butler. I would listen with Terrace Marshall.
I don't think anyone listened with Hakeem Butler because
everybody loved him.
Everybody's like, nah, man, he's gonna be all right. It was funny because in that class, that was a really weird class if you think about it, because everybody had different wide receiver ones.
I know it was
some had N'Keal Harry, some had AJ Brown, some had Calvin Harmon, some had Butler. I was a big Kevin Harmon fan, and when he fell the 6th round, I'm like, oh my god,
that was bad. That's probably honestly in terms of wide receiver scouting, that's my biggest hit of class, because aside from Hakeem Butler, who was my wide receiver too, behind DK Metcalf. I had AJ Brown as wide receiver 3. Terry McLaurin was my wide receiver 4, which is a completely unpopular opinion to a lot of people.
Huge hit.
And then I had N'Keal Harry as like my wide receiver 8 or something. Like he was way down. I didn't like him at all.
I think I had Harry like wide receiver 2. I don't want to talk about it.
All right, let's get to your Chicago Bears. We'll go through the last 2 teams really quick, but we'll talk about your Bears because you're a Bears fan a little bit longer. So, who do you got for Chicago? I think I know who it is.
I have Bateman.
Yeah.
Because I think for me, I think they pick Farley there. Newsom's a fit. I think they want to get some cornerback help after Fuller left, obviously, if they released him. But, man, I mean, if they pass on Bateman, especially with Allen Robinson probably not being in town in 2022, they're going to need a number 1 option. I think he's not as high-end as Allen Robinson, but I think he's pretty dang good. Yeah. Like I think he's a solid wide receiver. I don't think he has the ceiling of guys like Devontae Smith or Jalen Waddle or Jamar Chase. I don't think he's that high end of a prospect, but I think he's good and safe, and he's someone you can rely on a week in, week out basis. I also think that gives Andy Dalton a legitimate receiving core. You know, you have Allen Robinson, Cole Kmet, Darnell Mooney. Then you had Rashad Bateman.
You're talking yourself into Andy Dalton. You're doing some real gymnastics now.
I have no choice but to talk myself into Andy Dalton.
Don't worry. You don't have to talk yourself into Andy Dalton when you guys take Kellen Mond at 20.
If that happens, if Rashad Bateman's on the board and they go and take Kellen Mond, I will lose my marbles.
Oh, dude, it'll be the doomsday scenario for me is if the Bucs take Kyle Trask at 32, because I've seen that mocked a little bit too many times.
Oh, no.
If they took Kyle Trask in the 4th round, I'd be pissed off.
Yeah, no, Kyle Trask is basically just Mason Rudolph reincarnated.
He's just Jake Fromm. That's all he is, anyway.
That's bad.
Yeah. Who do you got? You got Bateman too, right?
I got Bateman as well. I mean, you kind of mentioned it. A guy in the mold of an Allen Robinson type can be that possession type receiver. If Allen Robinson were to leave, even if Allen Robinson decides to say, guess what? You have a really good, reliable number 2 wide receiver in Rashad Bateman. I think if he fell to 20, which I honestly think saying if he fell is a statement in itself, because apparently the NFL is lower on him comparatively to us in the fantasy community, which doesn't really make sense to me because I think his draft capital should be in that 12 to 20 type area, and I've seen him mocked lower than that.
I mocked New England at 15 in our last mock.
Yeah, like if he's there at 20, I think personally the Bears need to take him. He needs to be the pick, quite simply. If they go another direction, I don't even know where else to put them in terms of a receiver in this draft, quite frankly.
Despite Farley's injury issues, I don't think he's going to be on the board still, personally. Yeah. I don't buy that a premier position like that and a potential blue chip prospect is going to fall that much. Because I think if Arizona was on the board at 16, they would take Caleb Farley. I don't think they're going to.
Oh, I think they have to, right?
Yeah, like I don't think they would let him pass him by. So on the Chicago front, we talked about this guy like really early in the video, but I give him Nico Collins. Yeah. Because I think they're going to take Mac Jones in the 1st round. I think that's who's going to end up being a Chicago Bear. Whether they trade up for him, whatever. I don't think he's going to fall to 20, but I think they would end up trading up for him.
If you trade up for Mac Jones, that'd be
yeah.
I mean, the thing is, I could see it happening. So I'm
your back's against the wall if you're Ryan Pace, right? Like you don't really have a lot of options. And I think with Nico Collins from the receiver perspective, Allen Robinson's on the franchise tag. You have Darnell Mooney and Anthony Miller. I mean, there's been rumors that Anthony Miller is being moved or something like that. I don't think anyone's paying anything for him. Nico Collins can step in and be your wide receiver 3, challenge for wide receiver 2 potentially, and he has the ceiling to potentially become a wide receiver 1 someday if Allen Robinson moves on from Chicago after his franchise tag.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think one of the quarterbacks ends up falling. Whether it's Lance, Fields.
It's going to be Fields.
And I don't get it whatsoever.
I don't either. I think it's gonna be one of them. And I got the full ESPN blurb. Apparently, like they're down to Lance and Jones. If they take Jones, Lance and/or Fields is gonna fall. The Bears have to. The trade up partner is gonna be 6 with Miami.
Or 7. And if it's not 6 with Miami because Pitts is on the board or something, like it's got to be Detroit or Carolina for sure.
Yep. Well, it's not going to be Detroit because they won't give you guys a quarterback. But yeah, Carolina at 8.
That's a good point. Yeah, Carolina at 8 would be one. I mean, man. I think
New England's going to beat you to the punch. I hate to say it. I think they're going to go. They're going to see a lot of Cam Newton and Justin Fields or Trey Lance, and they're going to build that rushing offense around those guys. And whoever it is, they're going to go get him. I think that's
player to learn under. Yeah, I mean that's a perfect player to learn under.
And if I'm Detroit, I'm thinking of it like this: say one of those two guys fell to 7. I'm going to look at it this: I could take a player here, or I can entertain New England and make sure Chicago can't trade up to 8 and get their pick. So if I'm Detroit, I'm looking at it. I'm like, you know what? I could take whoever here, but it means more to me making sure that the Bears are in quarterback purgatory and getting this value for this pick from a quarterback landscape. Because let's be honest here, New England's going to give you a boatload of picks to move up than just taking a receiver at 7 or Rashawn Slater. So there could be a little bit under the table there. In terms of potential strategy, if you're the Lions, thinking, let's make sure the Bears don't get their quarterback, and it's a rough time. But that being said,
we got to close this out. We are just going. Like I said, this is a great conversation. Again, we appreciate having you on because
100%, man.
It's been fun, and like I mean, there's a lot of receivers in this class, so I knew this was going to be a longer one. But let's go on to the Washington football team. We'll try and run through these last couple rapid fire. Who do you got as a pass catcher for them?
Sure. So for the Washington football team, I think they can go in a couple different directions. I think Anthony Schwartz is one that I think they would entertain. I think he's he's one of the fastest human beings on the planet, literally. Like he's a 100 meter guy. There's not many of those playing football at a high level, and he happens to be one of them. I think you go and get him with Fitz magic slinging the rock. I mean, they're not going to be afraid. At 74, 80, at pick 74, pick 83, to go and get a wide receiver like Schwartz who can stretch the field, who can make life easier for McLaurin and Samuel. But man, I mean, they're just trying to add weapons to that offense, and I think he's definitely one of them that he provides probably a better threat than he is an actual player. But I think that would be something that they would do because they're a team that's contending for an NFC title. They're pretty good. I mean, they're a pretty dang good team. They're pretty well balanced. They're pretty solid all around. They just need a couple more weapons on offense, and then we can see it go with Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, I actually went with the size speed element, and you mentioned Nico Collins' name earlier. I think that would be a tremendous fit. Give Ryan Fitzpatrick a guy that profiles as a type of weapon that he's used throughout his career. Because let's be honest here. We've watched Ryan Fitzpatrick throughout his career rely on that big size, athletic threat on the outside to really threaten the defense down the field. And Nico Collins can be that guy for this offense. You got the guys underneath with Curtis Samuel and Terry McLaurin that can create a ton of separation. Let's get him a physical guy who could end up profiling as their X receiver down the stretch. I think that would be a very good fit for Ryan Fitzpatrick.
I agree.
Yeah, he's used a guy like that, the guy behind me right there.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So with Washington, I actually went tight end. I went with Brevin Jordan because I think with Logan Thomas, you get more of your traditional tight end, right? And he's also an older player. A lot of people, like, obviously,
he's like 31.
He's like 31 years old because he was a quarterback coming into the league. Transitioned to tight end, and I think Brevin Jordan on his own can be that second tight end, that move tight end. You can use him in tandem with Logan Thomas if you love what you have in Logan Thomas, and then eventually Brevin Jordan becomes the full-time starter. And everything that you said about Brevin Jordan, I pretty much agree with. I expected him to test better. I think he's one of the best yards after catch tight ends that we've seen in a couple of years, to be honest, because I think he's more of the Jonnu Smith and Irv Smith type of tight end than he is the Zach Ertz or the Hunter Henry type of tight end. He's just a different mold. And I think Washington would be able to use him pretty well because they have a lot of versatile pieces already on their offense.
Sure. I totally agree with that.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So I think this is the final team that we got here, right? The Jacksonville Jaguars. Who do you got anyone on this? I added this one late on Angelo, so I see if he's got some time to prepare this one.
Yeah, no, I saw you added it late. I actually switched my answer. I actually have Pat Freiermuth. I think that'd be a good fit there. They need a number one tight end in the offense and one that can block. and he profiles the best blocking tight end in this class. So I think that would be a really good fit for them. He's a good red zone receiver as well, offers you that big body, that big presence for Trevor Lawrence. But man, I think what they're trying to do too is they're trying to pound the ball a little bit. You know, they have a James Robinson. You know, they have a pretty decent young offensive line that they're building around. So I think Freiermuth can be an extension of that and really help out their run game and help Trevor Lawrence out as a red zone option as well.
Yeah, I went tight end as well. And
I have the same tight end, so I echo everything you just said.
With Pat Freiermuth going for me earlier on to the Cardinals, I actually had them going with Hunter Long. And quite frankly, you basically have the ideal receiving core going into the season. I mean, I think DJ Chark, Marvin Jones, Laviska Shenault offers you a threat at each level of the field.
Sure.
Having a guy in line like Hunter Long could provide so much for this offense. Currently, their slated starter at tight end would be Chris Manhertz. There's going to be Josh Oliver truthers throughout this offseason if they don't take a tight end. I think all that gets put to shut as soon as the NFL draft starts, because
they got two second rounders too. So Freiermuth, Long, Jordan, they all make sense. I think they might have another third too. Like they have a lot of picks in the range where the tight ends are going to go to, which is really helpful. I think it's like a guaranteed lock that one of these top
for sure.
Jacksonville.
100%. And basically echoing what you said about Pat Freiermuth could apply to Hunter Long as well. With Pat Freiermuth already being off the board for me, Hunter Long, good fit here for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah. So I hope you guys, if you guys knew nothing about the pass catchers in this class, you probably just got a boatload of information about them. And Angelo, thanks for staying with us for an hour and 40 minutes.
Appreciate that.
Oh man, anytime.
Yeah, we know you're most famous on Twitter for your film analysis. More so, we didn't really obviously have a time to dig into these guys deep from a film perspective, more nuance of their game. But I encourage all of you guys, if you haven't checked out Angelo's work, to go ahead and do so. He mentioned his Y series. I've checked out pretty much every single one that he dropped. And I mean, if any of you guys out there have our draft guide, you know that we have some film clips in our articles. Well, Angelo kind of kicked our ass with the amount of film that he has in his articles. So he's got really in-depth breakdowns on all the top prospects. Anyone that you guys want to learn about, you can check out at Angelo's website.
Yeah, thank you guys so much, man. It was a pleasure being on. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the NFL draft, man. It's coming up. It's coming up Thursday.
Exciting times.
I believe this might be dropping Wednesday, so it might be tomorrow when people are listening to this. So
that'd be great.
Yeah. With that being said, hope you all enjoyed. Peace out.
Wire me the money.